Hello and welcome to the Bellingham Real Estate Podcast. I'm Paul Balzotti. I'm here with Marsha Brown. Welcome, Marsha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And today we are talking about downsizing or right-sizing, specifically for boomers. We've done a podcast before where we talked about downsizing with Molly Visser, where we talked about when your first kids are first growing up and getting out of the house, if you wanted to downsize at that point. This is a different conversation altogether. And we're going to cover your process as a realtor, but also having just done it. And then also for if your parents are boomers and are about to be going through some, this process, how to help them and tips for them as well. So Let's get started. So Marsha, you've been in real estate for a long time. How many years now?
Well, in Bellingham for 5 years, I think. And I did it previously when I lived in Los Angeles for about 10 years.
Yeah. So 15 plus years of, and then even more in the business, like around the business,
right?
All sorts of positions. And you just sold your home, downsized. So let's just why don't you just share everybody like what you just did?
Yeah. I had been in my home for 34 years. So raised my two sons there, and it was quite a process. And really just, I think for me, it was coming to the realization that the time was right. And going through that. Also, how do I even start? It becomes the thing. And so what I did was kind of in stages as it ended up, and had an ADU on my property that I moved into, which was a quarter the size of the primary home. And so that was a good testing place for me, and it showed me what was important, what the priorities were, and how to do that. Then I came to the place of wanting to sell the whole property, and having to weed through everything. That's 34 years of memories, good and bad, and decide what do I want and what do I really need.
Yeah.
And finding the right place was really a challenge and a learning experience. I'm lucky being in this career that I get to see a lot of houses, and so I could see all the various options out there, and I can walk through and say, I could live here, and get to that place. And so that really helped me. And so that's probably something I would also say for somebody else is expose yourself to all the options.
Absolutely.
You think you know what you want, but you might be surprised.
That's a really good point. When you bring up ADUs, a lot of people will think, well, I don't have an ADU on my property. One thing I have to mention is with the new ADU laws passing, there's going to be more and more homeowners who will have the option of, okay, because you could build up to 2 ADUs on your property, because you could build a bigger ADU now, because you could build an ADU even when you don't have the parking for the ADU, all of those laws with those changing. That's going to be maybe option number one for many people is maybe I'm going to build an ADU and move on to that ADU, rent my larger home. And if nothing else, for the investment, but then also you brought up a good point as far as testing out, how does this size feel to me? How does this, cause you moved into your ADU, how big was that?
About 620 square feet.
600 square. And what are you living in now?
Right around 1,500.
Good, yeah. So maybe you decided you wanted a little bit more than 620. So, that's good because, some people say, oh, I only need this much space.
Right.
Maybe try living there for a month or two and see what that's like.
It's very true, and you can do it. But
a lot of people do and love it.
But you're kind of always temporary about it, as that you still have that storage locker with all those things hiding in it, and that you need to go through.
Oh, you're talking about, now you're talking about you still had all the stuff in storage.
I had a lot of stuff in storage.
And garage.
I didn't go through that process of weeding out. And it is a process. It can be gut-wrenching, really.
Yeah.
but it's such a good process. I don't know if you're familiar with Marie Kondo, who does a show about organization and that kind of decluttering. And her guideline is, does it bring you joy? And I would add to that, might it bring someone else even more joy? And start, finding, there's so many places that if your kids don't want it, which is very likely, there's lots of places that would want your things. And,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you in a minute about if you have parents that are going through this process, how those folks can help their parents. But for you, being a realtor, helping others with this, but then also having gone through it just yourself, it's always different, as you said, when you go through it yourself. What did you learn that you were already in real estate, but you hadn't just done that yourself? What did you learn going through that process that surprised you that you've now picked up on that you're going to share with others? And maybe jumping right into, what are steps 1 and 2? It sounds like steps 1 is starting to explore the market in general, figuring out kind of, and I think that's always really smart as far as physically looking at things, searching, researching, definitely. But, and then there's the storage and the stuff and getting rid of things too, both those processes. But would that be step 1 and 2, or what would you say are like your top tips and then your first couple of steps you recommend to people now?
I think the first step really is to define, why is it time for me to do this and go through this process, and identify the motivation will help you then zero in on the target new home. And because there's all kinds of reasons why people are doing this. I mean, when I did it, I was still able to mow my lawn, and I was healthy. I mean, there wasn't really any of that kind of thing, but it just felt too big. And but everybody has a different reason. You could have lost a spouse and you're ready to move on, or whatever. And so I think that would be the first thing that I would look at. And then I would talk to people that have gone through it, and friends, and I can give a lot of anecdotal experience for my friends, and I went through a lot of that with them, kind of going through that process, and learned a lot about options. And so, yeah, I think that would be the first step that I would go to.
Yeah, because you're right. Because there's so many options as far as, are you going to move into an active community? Are you going to move into some sort of senior center, or are you going to move into a condo or just a smaller home? Those are kind of just like the categories of options, right? And so figuring out how the why matches up with what the best next thing would be.
Right. And the other thing is to then look beyond the reason now and try to incorporate what might the next move or change in my environment need to be. What if I fall? What if I move into this great place and I fall? And, or whatever. Anyway, look at it as, is this going to be something that is going to satisfy other needs as they come up?
Totally.
More of a long-term look.
Yeah.
And if you're moving or looking at this with your partner, is this a place that would be suitable for me if I was alone at some point?
Yeah.
And both of you look at that side.
Yeah. And I guess I left off there. So you have condominiums, you have adult, or senior centers, senior living, which there's a huge variation of those.
Yes.
As far as how much, some of them, they're just helping a little bit. Some of them, they're helping a lot.
Right. And some of you are just staying there and waiting until you do need more assistance. They also have
different levels.
Very independent living.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's also parks, like you can, if you wanted to be in a detached dwelling, and those tend to be more budget friendly, of course.
Right.
And a lot of those options as well. And some of those are 55 plus, some are not. So you're right.
Yeah.
There is so many options. I could see how that can be a little bit overwhelming in a way.
Well, and also the variation in HOA fees
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah.
And you have to determine, do I need all of the things that are being covered by that HOA, or am I better off, not having someone mow my lawn?
Right. Well, in HOA, if somebody's lived in a house their whole life, really understanding what's included too, because, you'll see some dues that are $750, but they include cable and internet, and they include pretty much everything. And then you'll see others that are $350 that really just include just the common area maintenance and stuff like that. And so there's a huge variation as far as the dues, and then a huge variation as far as what's included with the dues.
Yes.
So
yeah. And if it's not an age restricted area, very often those dues are only like $60, $75, just for, like you say, the common area part.
Yeah.
And, not everyone who is a boomer is looking to be in an age-restricted area.
Sure.
Some people really enjoy having the variation and listening to kids laugh and whatnot,
Totally. Yeah. And not to mention, if you're in a 55 plus, if you're looking for that, it limits quite a bit your options, because there's so many more condominium developments and housing projects that are not 55 plus.
Right.
So it just opens up your variety and options more so too. Okay. So definitely the psychology, the why, the research, the talking to a lot of people, the figuring out, you're right. Look, you're saying, don't just look at why I want to downsize now, but like what might be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Is this going to be a good longer term fit for me? Is that what I want? Then definitely you're doing the research as far as physically going and checking stuff out. That's a great idea, and super important. And I think one of the best things about realtors that is we don't get a lot of kudos for this is, you hire almost any other profession. You hire an attorney, you hire, any other therapist, which we kind of do a little bit of both of those things. You're getting charged per the hour. And I've never met a realtor who has said, oh my gosh, my client just called me. They're not ready to move for another year, but they want to start exploring their options and looking at homes. What a drag. Like every realtor is happy because they understand that like they want to help be part of that journey. That's why we're in the business. And so, and I feel like a lot of times people will just go to open houses and kind of do their own thing right up until they're ready to do something, when they could have used some more guidance by grabbing a hold of a realtor sooner.
Right.
And so, getting a hold of somebody like you, or whoever to start looking at houses as they come up, condos as they come up, that might be of interest, to start really feeling out.
Yeah.
Of course, open houses are great too, but getting that help early. And you spent a good amount. I mean, you spent a good amount of time, but you're in it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And you did just end up, you're in a 1,500 square foot house in a neighborhood,
Yeah.
So there's that part of it. And then you definitely would say that number two, or well, that's, I guess, number one, number two, number three is, number one is the why. Number two is the search and the research. Number three is that usually the stuff part of it is what you're saying.
Well, it is that. And it's also looking at wants versus needs. And don't be afraid to keep your wants in there. That was kind of one of the mistakes that I made, was I thought I can do without, I don't need, all this. And I found that I really missed not having a fireplace. That became a priority for me then, to find my final place. And things like that, covered parking for the convenience of all of that. But anyway, yeah. So, and one of the hints that in getting rid of stuff that's hard to part with is they suggest that you take a picture of it If it's a family heirloom or, you remember, your mom using it back in the day or whatever, take a picture of it and then let it go. Because you're not probably going to set a table for 12 anymore.
Right.
And, so anyway, that's one way around it. And
yeah, you could even probably print have a book of
right.
all these items that you want to like look back on and everything like that. That's a good thought.
It would be kind of fun.
Yeah. So that's really, really good. So you go through those steps, and then there's the buy first, then sell first, then buy. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, all of that. And that has a lot to do with your financial position. The nice thing about a lot of people, at about your point, is a lot of them do have a ton of equity, which the powerful thing about that is they may be in a position where if they wanted to take out a big home equity line, buy the place first, move into it, and then sell, and not have to be contingent. There's a lot more of that possibility there, but it just depends on everybody's individual situation.
It does, and what their comfort level is. And,
right.
For that, I think that maybe my generation is a little less open to that idea because we finally are feeling, I got rid of all my debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but there are lots of possibilities out there, and I have a client right now who's bought her house first, and then has hers on the market now.
Well, we did a deal where me and you did a transaction together where they did a bridge loan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Which because they had enough equity, and when you look at those bridge loans, the first loan officer they talked to couldn't do it, and then the next did. So those bridge loan products also can be, you have to talk to multiple loan officers sometimes to find the product that might be right for you so that they could buy without having their home be contingent.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's forever grateful.
Yes, exactly. It wouldn't have worked out without that product.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the spring and the summer, when things start coming on, it's a fast moving market.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's hard to be contingent on your home sale.
Yeah.
Of course, we can do it if we need to be, but those other products can be great.
Right.
Okay. One more thing I want to touch on is, so, you're talking to a client right now and they say, and their parents, or maybe they're resisting the downsizing, or they want to help their parents. What would be your advice for people with parents in this situation that maybe should move or trying to get started, how they can help or how they could be supportive?
Right. I think it's a really important role for adult children, and keeping the lines of communication open is really the key, I think, and hopefully the parent is identifying that there may be a time now, but then their children or family need to also say what they're seeing but at the same time listening to what the other person is wanting, and offer not most young families and whatnot have the time. They don't have the time to do all the weeding out and everything that has to be done. But what they do have is the ability to source help. And I think that's really a big contribution, because this can be overwhelming for someone to try to find, do I want an estate sale? Do I want to donate? Do I want to put it in a consignment shop? I mean, all those things are available here. Or do the kids want it? I mean, every now and then, my kid will say, put a green tag on that one.
Yeah.
Like I'm going somewhere. And anyway, so I think that resourcing is important. And also the biggest one is tech support.
Yeah.
Honestly. There's so much that you can give in terms of setting up your family for transportation, for instance, the day will come, when you can't drive, and you need to find a place that's walkable, that's convenient, that's near transportation. And I have a good buddy, Wes, told me that he told his kids, whichever one of you takes my keys away, that's the one I'm moving in with.
That's great.
It's everybody's fear of having to give that up. But there are lots of options that our adult children can help us with in terms of tech that can be overwhelming. That's my Christmas present this year from my kids.
What is that?
Helping to set up all the things that make my living continue to be independent, whether it's a smartwatch, Alexa, or whatever it is. I got a new iPad. I think that's invaluable.
No, definitely. I know that I go to my mom's house to fix her streaming service all the time and stuff, because she's not using cable anymore. She's using streaming service, which is cheaper, and so you have a different kind of. It's not as simple as cable now. You have to kind of, there's. So you're right. Technology support's huge, and I think I would add also that, because my parents are boomers, right? It's trying to also strike a good balance of, them, so well, you have this kind of level of honesty that you can provide, and it's trying to strike the balance of, sometimes telling them things that they need to hear, and that maybe no one else their friends wouldn't necessarily say to them that right. You can say to them, but then also recognizing that and supporting, them for it's still, if they feel like, oh, I got 10 good years or I got this many good years, this is how I want to spend it. And then trying to just be supportive of that. When my mom moved up here, I had an idea of where I thought she should live, and I'm a realtor. I know where, and I would never do this with a regular buyer, but I was like definitely steering her towards like certain things. And then she ended up buying something different. And it was just the way it worked out. But of course I supported her, in which she ended up picking out and ended up being perfect for her, but it wasn't what I had in my brain. And I think as the adult kids, not being too stubborn about what you think is best, being really supportive, but at the same time, having that open line of communication and those honest conversations, because there may not be a lot of other people, especially if it's a single, person, may not have a lot of other people in their lives that are telling them everything they need to hear,
Yeah, and it's two different perspectives.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it is a good exchange. I think it's good for both.
Yeah.
To have that exchange of looking at two different points of view that makes you start thinking a little more precisely about what's real.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or?
No, I read, just happened to see a post in someone's yard that caught me, because it was after we had talked about doing this, and it said, life is a balance between holding on and letting go. And I just thought it was so spot on.
Yeah. That is good.
Yeah. And
it's perfect way to close this out, and we'll let this podcast go. But obviously reach out to Marsha if you or your folks need help and with such a thing. And thank you so much, Marsha, for joining, and thank you for listening or watching, you guys. Cheers.
Thank you.